So I don't know what I'm going to call this video, but I wanted to stop and take a moment so that I could rant about the book that I just read.
Yay!
It's called Memoirs of an Ex-Prom Queen by Alix Shulman, and it was written, I think, in like the 60s or 70s. I could be very wrong about that guess, so don't quote me on it. I always have a lot of feelings about the books that I read, and I never have a good place to vent to, and I thought YouTube would be a good place to do that. And let me tell you, I definitely have a lot of feelings about this book in particular. So, where to start describing this book? It's essentially the embodiment of the feminist doctrine that weak men will hate you for embracing, and I love it. To be honest with you, I'm actually surprised that I enjoyed this book because I do not like the main character at all. And a lot of times when a book is like that and the character is kind of irredeemable in my eyes at a lot of parts, I tend to dislike the book as a whole. The story definitely starts out as a story that's probably familiar to a lot of women out there. She talks about being a normal little girl and running around and playing and doing all the boy things, and about how when she was young, she slowly began to realize that the only thing that society valued and that seemed important for a little girl was to be beautiful. She talks a lot about the dynamic between the little boys and the little girls, and as they age, she continues to talk about those relationships between men and women in depth. She even goes as far as to say, "Before I was 10, like everyone else, I unquestioningly accepted the boys' hatred of us as normal." Now the beginning is a little bit iffy for me. It does start with her older, coming back from going on a trip around Europe and meeting up with her husband. She seems a little vapid and a little shallow at the beginning, so I will say that the first bit of the book, I wasn't 100% sold on it. Even though I'm not a huge fan of Sasha, Sasha's the main character. I don't know if I actually mentioned that yet. Oh well. Now here's the parts that I really wanted to rant about. Don't worry, I'm not planning on putting any major spoilers in here. This book is packed with a lot that I just can't get into in one YouTube video. In this book, Sasha does a lot of cheating. Now, the first affair that we find out about her having is her cheating on her husband with a young, single, strapping man in Spain. Which I'm kind of like, cheating, not the most morally great thing that a person can do, but if you're gonna ruin a marriage, at least ruin your own. I try not to judge her too much because I definitely understand that she's feeling trapped, and especially at the time when she was doing the cheating, women didn't have the same agency to live independent lives that they do now, and so I can see why keeping a husband is necessary for her. I still don't like her though. However, the cheating that I really couldn't get behind actually takes place when she starts reflecting back on her college days. She starts up an affair with one of her professors who is married. It seems to me that a lot of times in this book she confuses feminism with things that empower her as an individual in the moment without ever stopping to think how it might affect other women who also deserve to be empowered. She often refers to this professor's wife as her enemy, despite having never met the woman. And throughout the book, she refers to a lot of other women as enemies. I don't know how many times we have to say it in this society, but women are not your enemy. And yes, that message is for men and other women. Too often, even in today's society, I think that we end up pitting ourselves against each other when really, that's not what we should be focusing on. About the only woman that she doesn't seem to have contempt for would be Roxanne. Roxanne is a friend that she meets in college and becomes very close to. Roxanne is your ultimate feminist, and I absolutely love her. Though the book doesn't focus much on her, it does make it known that she definitely goes through a lot of the same struggles that Sasha goes through. And I would argue some situations that are even tougher to work through than Sasha's. But she stays strong, she stays independent, and eventually, after finding herself stuck in a marriage out of necessity, she begins planning and eventually divorces him and lives a free and independent life. Full disclosure, I probably would have much rather read a book about Roxanne than about Sasha, but I understand that Sasha's journey is just as important and it has a lot of different avenues that people might be interested in. Essentially, this book follows her throughout her whole life, and while I don't agree with everything that she did, it was still very interesting. It's especially interesting for me to read because her mindset is just so different from my own. And I kind of assume that that's got a lot to do with the time period that we grew up in. She grew up in a time with a lot more open, rampant misogyny. And even though there's plenty of it around still today, this book does a really good job of making you grateful for just how far we actually have come. I think what's most frustrating to me about Sasha's character is that there are so many times in the book that she does stop to self-reflect, but of course the conclusions that she comes to are not the ones that us as readers are probably coming to. So many times in this book I think, man, this woman needs a good therapist. And then she goes and she gets a therapist and she still manages to be a dummy about it all. She seems so self-centered and so focused on every little individual, minute aspect of her life and keeping up appearances. Her biggest problem seems to be that she is so focused on herself, so focused on analyzing her own actions and everything, that she doesn't have time to actually make real helpful changes in her life. It seems to me that she's never able to make an actual, true, meaningful change in her life because she's not first addressing the problems that she has within herself. Occasionally she'll make some moves in the right direction and a couple thoughts will cross her mind that you're like, yes, keep going with that, keep embracing that. But in the way that I read it, she never fully commits to them. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about the end of the book. I definitely liked it, but I'm not super sure why. At the end of the book, I'm left wondering exactly how much progress she's made, and I kind of do want to know more. But overall, I think it's a really good book, and I'd highly recommend that somebody read it. Pour yourself a nice glass of wine. It's that kind of book. And you'll probably breeze through it in no time. I know I sure did. If you're at all interested in any sort of feminist literature, this is definitely a book that you must read. I'm usually not one actually for a ton of feminist literature, though I am a feminist myself. A lot of times I just don't care for the writing styles that feminist authors tend to adopt, but I did actually really enjoy this one. This book brings up a lot of really good sentiments, and it's a really, really good read. If you really want to know more about this book, you can DM me on Instagram or something. I just really don't want to give away any more spoilers, and I know if I keep talking, I probably will. With that being said, it's been real. It's been really real, and I hope that you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video. Infighting gets you nowhere, just like inbreeding. I don't know why I said that.